Welcome, everybody. Thank you all for joining us today.
Yes, thank you. I'm Wendy Perrin. I'm the Director of Programs for English Learners, and I'm joined by my colleague Nicole, who is the Executive Director of Teaching and Learning. Nicole Doherty. Thank you, Nicole Doherty. So we're glad you could join us tonight for this information session about dual language programs, and we are being guided through this exploratory process by a very talented consultant, Alexandra Guillermo. Guillermo. Yes? And Alexandra has helped 47 states get dual language programs up and running, so we feel very solid in her care, and I think you will too after today's session, so thank you for joining us. Alexandra.
Thank you, Wendy.
Welcome, everybody. I am so excited to have you all here today. Please know that I'm just going to give you about 20-30 minutes max of information. The real goal is to know what questions you have and for you all to have an opportunity to share your interests, okay? But I want you to know some of the things that we have learned so far, we know so far, but a lot of decisions for the dual language program have not been made just yet. We need to have parent, family, school, data input to finalize all those decisions, okay? All right, so let's get started. Here's our goals for today. Why should we support dual language education? What results support the effectiveness of dual language? How do we identify the goals of the program? What's the implementation plan that we know so far? And how can I, if we get a dual language program, support my students in the partner language of instruction, okay? All right, so my good friends, here's the biggest why. The biggest why is that we know our emergent bilingual students are absolutely brilliant. We know they are. Learning another language isn't anything that's unnatural. Kids can learn additional languages at faster rates than we can as adults. And yet, for many of our students, they have an achievement gap behind their English-only speaking peers, and we need to close that. The fact of the matter is that right now what we know is that we've had an educational approach for our emergent bilingual students and an educational set of opportunities for our English-speaking students that is ill-suited to prepare them for the 21st century in which we are sending them off to. The future of Manchester, the future of New Hampshire, the future of the U.S. is bilingual. And giving your students and giving Manchester students the opportunity to learn a second language not only improves academic achievement for emergent bilinguals, but it also improves academic achievement for all students. Because the interesting thing that we have learned is that it's not just emergent bilinguals that outperform gen ed students or general education students by around 4th or 5th grade. It's actually students that come from English-speaking homes that also outperform other students that come from English-speaking homes by around 4th or 5th grade. Dual language is an educationally phenomenal model. We know that part of its phenomenality, its fabulosity, is ingrained in the benefits themselves of being bilingual. We don't want our students just to be successful in science, math, reading, social studies. We want them to be successful in life. And in order to be successful in life, we need them to have things like the ability to focus on tasks. I'm not always the best one for that, but it is a benefit of bilingualism. Bilingualism helps them switch between tasks, improve cognitive skills. It helps them improve their memory, make improved decision making, and helps them understand and be more aware of language, the parts of language, the rules of language, which in turn helps them become even more bilingual. Most bilinguals, and I'll tell you a little side story. I'm a researcher. Part of the work that I do is to research what works for kids across the country. And my specialty area of research is the bilingual reading brain. And what we now know when we start looking at the brain of kids who are bilingual is that each new language piece that they learn, it teaches itself to learn more language. So literally we can see it on brain images that your students teach themselves to teach themselves more language just by being in dual language programs, just by being by being bilingual. It's pretty amazing to watch it happen, even when you look at the brain scans. But these aren't the only benefits of dual language. We also want to make sure that we have students that can use their new language skills to build relationships, to communicate, make friendships, build bridges between cultures, because that is also the future of the country. We want to prepare them for 21st century employment opportunities, because more and more jobs are asking for people that have additional language skills. All of these are benefits that can start with dual language programs. Now, there are lots of different dual language programs, okay? There's no one prescription for what any district has to have. But there are some types that we have to pick from. We can't do like a homegrown mesh of all four. Only one. One per building. On the far right, we have World Language Immersion. World Language Immersion is a program model that is designed for students that come from English-speaking homes. Okay? We often see this with Mandarin and French. We want our students to have an additional language. We want them to have additional opportunity because it's good and right for them. That's the future we want for our kids. And it's amazing. In a world language immersion program, your students will learn an additional language and English, but they will learn all the content areas as well while learning in those two languages. They will learn math, science, everything. The question on the left is the who. And the answer is all English-speaking students. Okay? The next one is a heritage language program. Heritage language programs, they're a little bit nuanced. They're all English-speaking students, but they also have a connection to another language, right? For some of us, it's if I speak Mandarin or my parents speak Mandarin and my kids don't speak it, but I want them to learn it. I want them to learn to speak it, to read it, to write it. They're heritage language kiddos. They already have a foundation of that language there. And I want to foster the foundation that already exists from their heritage and all the giants that walk before them. Maybe it's French. My grandmother speaks French. And I don't speak enough French to my children, but I want them to learn French. If that's me as a parent, we're more of a heritage maybe. That's the left side of the umbrella. Those are English-speaking homes who are the intended beneficiaries. And those are important program models. On the right side, however, there are a different set of intended beneficiaries. We have two-way immersion. Two-way immersion, the intended beneficiaries are both emergent bilingual and English-speaking families. We want to make sure that emergent bilingual students have an opportunity to bask in the fabulosity of their language. For me, it's Spanish. I have a fabulous Spanish. It's laden with Caribbean accents. And I, in a two-way program, get to gift my Caribbean Spanish fabulosity to an English-speaking student who's my peer. And guess what? That student gets to gift their English fabulosity to me. And in that way, there's a beautiful two-way exchange where peer-to-peer, my Spanish is just as important as your English, and your English is just as important to my Spanish, and we both, I love those sounds. And we both learn all the content areas while sharing and exchanging our language assets. That's a two-way dual language program. We think this program might be the right match with Manchester. But remember what I said, we are still in the learning and design phase. I cannot tell you for sure that that's it. But we think that the data is showing us that it's the right match for Manchester. The last one over here is a developmental bilingual or a one-way. The developmental bilingual or a one-way basically says there's all Spanish-speaking or French-speaking or Portuguese-speaking students that are enrolled, and they are all learning English. They're all emergent bilinguals who are coded L's, who all want to add more English. We don't think that's the right match for Manchester. The data is not saying that you have the numbers to support that kind of program. Okay? Does this make sense? Are there questions about this? Because sometimes that's a lot. Okay? If you have questions, just let me know. Okay. Now, I'm going to tell you that while this is the research from Turnbull, Hart, and Lapkin, we have since then added a great deal of research to the table, okay? Somebody in the first sort of session that we were doing from the staff side asked, can we get some more recent research? And for me, I try not to flood people with research. I live in the world of research, but I don't want to drown people in it. So I've committed to sending that research to some of the leadership team, and they will have it available for anybody who wants some more up-to-date stuff. But the reality is that even though students might spend half their day in a partner language and only part of their day in English, we already know that from both sides, our Spanish models and our English models, our French models and English models, our Mandarin models and English models, both students groups tend to outperform their counterparts. Now, it doesn't have the same trajectory as a typical gen ed classroom, okay? It's not the same. We typically expect gen ed classrooms to be all set and ready to go by 3rd grade. That is not the trajectory in a dual language classroom. The typical trajectory is somewhere around 4th and 5th grade. We end up outperforming our counterparts even on state assessments that are taken in English. I need to let that marinate just a little bit. Because a lot of the concern for dual language programs is how are they going to spend 50, 60, 70, 80, 90% of their day in Spanish or in French if they have to take the test in English? What we now know from research is that it doesn't matter. As long as instructionally certain ingredients are in place. Part of my job is to make sure that they are. What we know is that students will still thrive. They thrive in ways that are outperforming non-dual language classrooms who have had all of their instruction in English. And that's something that it's important for us to know. But also realize that it doesn't always happen in the 3rd grade. Okay? Now, some people want two-way. Some people want two-way. But what I always tell folks is that if you want a two-way, the community has to want it. And people say we want two-way because look at the top line, Alexandra. Who wouldn't want this to be the results for our students? Well, of course. But in order to have a two-way, the very best of the program models, the one that shows the greatest results, you all have to show the interest. And here's part of what a two-way needs. 50% English-speaking homes where we enroll our students to be the English-speaking model for the classroom. And 50% of the students coming from the partner language homes so that they can serve as the partner language model. I have to have enough kids. In an ideal universe, it would always be 50% of this group and 50% of this group. But I don't always live in utopia, educational utopia. Every once in a while, reality is we can't have those perfect numbers. Even in an imperfect world, we cannot exceed 1/3 to 2/3 in either direction. As long as we can maintain 1/3 Spanish models, 2/3 English models, 2/3 Spanish models, 1/3 English models, it doesn't matter the direction. What research says is that I can still depend on instructional strategies that will create success for students. What happens is that sometimes we exceed that 1/3, 2/3. And then we have two poor French or Arabic or Mandarin speaking models, and they're sitting there, two poor kids, with 8 other English speaking or vice versa. The problem with that is that it forces the teacher to make instructional decisions that go against some of the key ingredients of what makes dual language so effective. So while it doesn't seem like 50-50, right? 50% English model, 50% Spanish model, or 1/3, 2/3 is that big of a deal. The numbers aren't a big deal. The implication and what it means for what people have to do instructionally to make it work, that's where the big deal comes in. And so part of my job, right, as I work with Manchester, is to also create an enrollment policy and process that allows you to maintain this so that you can have a program of integrity. because we haven't, right, like confirmed, nothing is certain yet. We're still in this feasibility phase, right? Because we don't know it's a two-way yet, I can't say this is gonna be how the lottery process works. Here's gonna be our buckets, here's gonna be our time, right? All of that is gonna be a reflection of what those decisions are, and once one thing gets approved, then it allows us to do the next set of things. But right now, we need to know that we have sufficient interest, because even though I think it's the right match for Manchester, if we don't have 50% and 50%, or at least 1/3, 2/3, we can't do a two-way dual language program to Manchester, and I don't have enough kids to fill the seats.
What are the changes that teachers have to make when the 1/3 ratio is exceeded?
So, here's a prime example. May I use you an example, sir? Wonderful. So, here's a wonderful example. If I'm the Spanish model, what's your name?
Gavin.
And Gavin is my English model. One of the instructional strategies that's a core strategy for dual language is bilingual pairs. Right? So Gavin might be my bilingual pair. It forces me during certain interactions to practice my English, and he's gonna give me the word when I forget. Because he's got it. Right? I need your English fabulosity, Gavin. Can you lend it to me? And he's gonna say, yeah, Alexa, here's the word. So now I don't have to ask the teacher. I've learned a tool to be independent, educational fabulosity. And I've also learned a means and a strategy to stretch my vocabulary with my peers, sheer fabulosity. But the other wonderful thing is that Gavin, did you grow up around here, Gavin? No? Where'd you grow up around?
Wisconsin.
You grew up in Wisconsin? You're my neighbor, we're practically cousins. By growing up in Wisconsin, Gavin's gonna have access to a set of words that may be unique to him. So the word that he shares with me may be new for everybody. So now through my bilingual pair, we just stretched everybody's vocabulary. But here's the problem. What if me and Gavin are the only two English-speaking kids in the whole class? How do I make bilingual pairs? What if I need a Spanish term? Then me and Gavin are like this. I don't know how to do this. I'm just gonna sit here and forget it. Right? Or the opposite. Gavin, I asked last time. You go ask me. You go ask. Right? And every 2 seconds, one of us is coming up. It's not gonna take long for one of us or both of us to become a huge behavior issue. Okay? So this is one simple example with one instructional strategy. But we have a set of core strategies and a range of strategies that are designed to ensure that students are successful. When we begin messing with the balance, we begin removing the ability of those strategies and those practices to be possible for teachers. I can't make a bilingual pair when I don't have a pair of bilinguals. Thank you. Yeah.
So my follow-on question is, how are pairs decided? So if there's.
Amazing. Data.
Okay, just because like say there's a student that's great in math, but they're not great in spelling, in English.
Gavin's my bilingual pair because of his English fabulosity. It's why it's our bilingual pairs. We'll have other pairings for other reasons, other groupings for other reasons, but when it comes to my bilingual pair, we're paired and we're partnered because Gavin needs my Spanish fabulosity and I need his English fabulosity. Okay? No, I won't be your partner unless you want me to be. I can be your partner. Any other questions? That's a great question, because one of the things that I am a stickler about with districts when I work with them is the enrollment process. Because to the extent possible, once this is decided, right now, I think it's the right fit, and so I think because it's the right fit, it's the recommendation. But I don't know if we even have the interest. But once we have that decision made, now we say, how do we create an enrollment process and a lottery system that ensures that we never put this bilingual pair's teacher, right? Put the option of that reality being in front of them. Because now it's the teacher's fight what to do about it, but it wasn't the teacher's issue. And we can fix that by having a really pristine model. Okay? Yes, ma'am.
Can I just ask what the timeline for planning and preparation for this whole process is?
We're gonna get there. Look, we only have like 3 sides left. Okay. Here are the have-tos. Ooh, my computer's gonna die. Sorry. Here are the have-tos. Well, I can't tell you if it's gonna be a one-way or two-way. I can't tell you if your students will spend 90% of the day or 50% of the day in Spanish starting. None of those things have been decided yet. Okay? I can tell you that number one, we're gonna focus on the assets. Okay? Whatever asset you bring to the table, we're gonna revel in that and grow from there. We're not gonna tell you that you're wrong, that's not how you say it, that's not a real word, da 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 da. We're gonna say, ooh, I like that word. Here's another way to say it. Here's the word we use in the science curricula. Here's the science terminology for it. We're gonna always focus on assets because assets have been proven to accelerate academic gains. 6 years, whatever you choose, the question is not, do you want to start dual language? That's never the question. The question is, do you want to have dual language for no less than 6 years? 6 years, because it takes 6 years to develop language. Academic language development takes 5 to 7 years, and so 6 years is the minimum requirement. We ask all school boards to approve that 6-year caveat with the approval of dual language. It cannot be separate, because if you pull them, it's not dual language that didn't work. We didn't even have a chance for our kids to become bilingual and biliterate. Okay? They have to have access to grade level academic standards and core content in both languages for all content areas. Now, what that looks like is different grade by grade, and it depends on what percentage students have in Spanish and in English. But your students are still going to be held accountable to, and so must be taught grade level learning and be grade level ready to be accountable to that learning. Okay? Now, I will tell you, and I shared this with the district, the way we learn to read when we're becoming biliterate, it is different. Because the earliest literacy skills in French, in Arabic, in Spanish, in Mandarin, they're not the same as English. To teach it the way we do in English would actually make it harder. And so we work authentically with how the language works, so that we have the most effective instructional practices in making sure that students become biliterate and bilingual, okay? The last piece is that we are, I mean, I don't even know what the word is that I'm looking for. Se me escapó. Oh, stay in English. She's giving me words in Arabic. Oh, focus. Sticklers, sorry. We are sticklers on quality instruction in both languages. So to get the dual language is one step, but the next step is that we really have to make sure that everybody has the professional development, everybody has the coaching, that they know what the core instructional strategies are. Just like we would do that in a gen ed classroom, we provide professional development and coaching all the time for our general education teachers. What are math strategies, et cetera, making sure that we stay focused on instruction. Once we get the dual language program is absolutely critical. And then the other piece is that when it comes to teachers, no code switching. Okay? So if you have a 2-teacher model, the Spanish teacher is gonna stay in Spanish. They're gonna use English to make cross-language connections, but those are really intentionally planned cross-language connections that help accelerate learning. It doesn't mix or mingle languages. It's for the purpose of accelerating learning. So one of my districts that we support in Massachusetts, that Manchester has already visited, they have something that they call Transfer Thursdays. And Transfer Thursdays is when they bring both Spanish and English teachers together, and they intentionally have strategies that they've brought to the table to transfer what they've learned in Spanish into English and transfer what they've learned in English into Spanish. That helps them to get all of the learning, grade level learning they have to, without having to repeat that instruction, okay? Because if I have to teach every standard twice, once in Spanish and once in English, it means that your students only get half the curriculum because they got it 2 times. And so we want to make sure to avoid that, but creating bridges between the 2 languages, and one way to do is like Transfer Thursday, is one of the things that your program will have to do, okay? So what's the plan? The plan is 2024-2025. The goal is to launch the first kindergarten class. Dual language programs launch with kindergarten, and then it grows with that kindergarten group, 1 grade each year, so until that class gets to 5th grade. Okay? Add a grade each year, and that's it. So that's what we know. I'm going to tell you, it's what we know. But most of our buildings, the biggest question that parents have, those that are new to dual language, to the immersion world, is what do I do to help my kids with homework? How do I help my kids with homework? If we are English speaking and they're getting homework in Spanish, and the answer is, you can read with your kids. That's one of the most important things you can do with your kindergarten students. Read with them. And the goal is that every family read in the language of the home. For my family, we are bilingual, and so we read in Spanish and in English. But if your home language is Arabic or French, or you have any other language other than English, read in that language. If your home language is English only, read in that language. To share a book with your kids is a blessing, and it's a blessing that will translate into your student success, okay? That's all the information that I have for you. What other questions do you all have for me?
So what does the process look like, I guess, from this point forward?
Okay, so the process from this step forward is that we have already started the technical support, okay? There are some pieces, the reason why I know what some of the recommendations are is because that technical support and learning has already begun. We had to go back and pull some additional data. They've already pulled that data for me, and Wendy already knows, Nicole already knows. I'm gonna say, please send it to me. I want it in my greedy little hand, because data's gonna drive all the decisions, right? The second piece is that you all will have very soon, starting, a 3-day institute. That institute is designed to break down and lay out date by date by date by date every single thing that has to happen. We also have a few additional pieces that have already been planned because I sort of know the way the timeline works. And the curricular decisions are some of the most important decisions just because of how long it takes on the side of the companies that your district will need to order for. And so I have to have a couple of follow-up conversations that have already been scheduled, but those decisions will be made. I don't remember the date, I have to look in my notebook, I apologize. Okay? But communication as information is learned, communication will continue to follow. This is only the first community night because we want to be really transparent with the community and we want to know the extent to which the community is interested and wants this. Thank you. Yes?
Do we know yet where the classrooms are gonna be? Is it 2 classrooms that they're planning?
That's a really good question. So based on attrition, right, which kids move out of the district, out of the community, et cetera, we always recommend that 2 classrooms be open so that it can handle that attrition rate and that the program is still sustainable, right? Now, we have a few buildings that are focused buildings. We visited with some today, right? But nothing has been finalized, nothing has been determined. The issue is to what extent is moving forward with program A, B, or C, right? Feasible if this is the timeline. And I'm gonna be transparent. For me, there's still a bit of a question mark around some things. And I try to be very transparent. There's a little bit of a question mark. I think it is feasible. But the next 2 months will be a huge indicator as to whether or not that happens, okay? Should everything go well 2 months, then this is your timeline. Okay, thank you. Yeah.
So are they always going to be paired with the same individual?
No.
Okay, so it's a rotating pair depending on
Just like I
how
would
they're-
have different like reading groups or math groups.
I wasn't sure if that added to the comfortability or like being able to be vulnerable about not knowing the word.
Sorry, that's my alarm. Let's be honest, we're working with kids, right? So while we want to use data to drive the instructional decision-making process, if I have a kid that I know learns best with someone that they know, it's a predictable person, we're gonna match that kid in that way, because dual language is all about ensuring all kids are successful, right? So even if we don't see the data that they have to, they're human beings.
Right, and kids are unpredictable, so.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I think we have time for one last question.
How many students do you anticipate being in the program?
That's a really great question. So I tell everybody that it's not my job to tell any district, because I am not here in Manchester how many students. But whatever the cap is for the district is, this is a district classroom. It's the cap for dual language. If that were to change, policy wouldn't fundamentally need to change. How many students? How many students are in any Manchester classroom? That's the number. My good friends, I appreciate you so much. Your kids have been rock stars, let me tell you, sticking through. May I? Let's just go with the fact that we're bilingual parents for the rest of the night.
Absolutely.
Somewhere are interest forms. If you're interested, please, by all means, share that. Again, this is the first informational of lots of communication to come. But I appreciate you spending the evening with me. It shows a great dedication to your kids. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you.